Hello and welcome to StudyGenie classes. Guys, as promised, this is our special video on Afghanistan issue. We will discuss in this video why Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires. साम्राज्यों का कब्रिस्तान, the graveyard of empires. Every big empire in the modern world history has always tried to conquer Afghanistan, and every superpower has been humiliated and forced to leave the soil of Afghanistan, thereby giving Afghanistan the title of the graveyard of empires. Not only in the modern history, if we will look in the ancient history as well, we will find that various rulers have tried to capture this soil, but they have drastically failed. In this video, we are going to have a look about who all are the rulers from ancient times who have tried to dictate their terms over Afghanistan, and they have failed, and what were the reasons that they were failed, and what is what is the cause, what is the reason that are fascinating every superpower, every man who claims himself to be possessing some sort of power to have command over the world, why every single superpower is getting attracted towards the soil of Afghanistan. So let's proceed. So look at the map of Afghanistan. This is the soil of Afghanistan. If you are looking at this is the map of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is surrounded by Iran on the west, Pakistan in the southeast and south region, and it is also having Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, China and India as its neighbors. Unfortunately, currently India is not a direct neighbor. India does not share any border with Afghanistan because this region falls in the POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So location wise, if you can see, if anyone who controls Afghanistan, then he has direct control over Iran, direct relationship with Iran, direct connections with Central Asia regions, the Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and also connections with China, India and Pakistan. That means it is you can say it is the center of Asia, it is the heart of Asia. If you want to control the Central Asian region and the Eastern European region, then Afghanistan becomes a crucial part. It also fascinates rulers because as H.J. Mackinder propounded the heartland theory in 1907. He said that anyone who controls Soviet Rus and China, then he will control the world. And the gateway to Soviet Rus was Afghanistan. The Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, all these were part of Soviet Rus, and the gateway to Soviet Rus was Afghanistan. In contrast to the heartland theory, Spikeman came up with his own theory known as the rimland theory. To counter this heartland theory, he said that anyone who controls not the heartland, rather the coastal regions of the heartland, will control the world. This is the Arabian Sea. This is Pakistan's. He said that those who control this rimland, the coastal regions of the heartland, the rimland, then they can control the world. So keeping all these theories aside, let's look at the history. Alexander the Great had came to India before his fight with Porus in the Punjab region. He came through the route of Afghanistan. He was severely injured. An arrow was shot at his arm and he was severely injured while battling in Afghanistan. Even it has been said by some of the historians that his mother criticized him that how a warrior you are that you cannot control a small territory of Afghanistan. It is taking so much time for you. So Alexander, one of the regions he was defeated, he was sent back by Porus, and his soldiers lost their energy and all in the borders of India. It was because of Afghanistan. Even Babur, as you all know, Babur came from Kabul to India. So every time Babur used to occupy or conquer some of the territories in Indian subcontinent, then a revolt would gain in Afghanistan. And he has to again get back through Pakistan to Afghanistan, suppress that revolt and came back again to India. Even when Babur died, he conquered Bengal, and after conquering Bengal, he was going on a right to suppress a revolt that has been waged in Afghanistan. And on the way, he died in Pakistan. Moving ahead, the video will now come into the modern history range. In modern history, we have seen three superpowers who were humiliated by Afghanistan tribes or the people of Afghanistan. Three superpowers were the British Empire in the 19th century and early 20th century, the Soviet Rus in the late 20th century, and now recently the USA. All these three superpowers, they have tried to control this particular territory, and they were severely humiliated and exited the territory. So we have divided this timeline into 5 regions. One is the Great Game that was played between Russia and the USSR and the British Empire. The period of semblance stability that followed the Great Game. Then began the Cold War period after the Second World War. Then with the end of Cold War in 1991, events started to change in Afghanistan with the rise of Mujahideens and leaving of Soviet Rus from Afghanistan. That 90s period, we will be discussing how the Mujahideens and Taliban came to power and all that. Those will be discussed in pre 9/11 attacks. And after that, the last phase of our discussion will be post 9/11 attacks. That means on 11th of September 2001, Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 aeroplanes and they blasted the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and while going to the White House, one of the planes were shot down. So after that, US put its military, and the NATO's military base were established in Afghanistan. We will be discussing that also. So beginning with the Great Game. First of all, this name, the Great Game, was given by Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard Kipling, a British author who was born in Bombay on 30th of December. He is a famous author, famously known for his short story Rikki Tikki Taw and his book Jungle Book. And he said the same Rudyard Kipling, he has given the term white man's burden. That means it is the responsibility of white men to civilize the uncivilized black races. So Rudyard Kipling gave the term the Great Game to the game that was going between the Russian Empire. When at that time Russia was a monarchy, Tsar was the ruler of Russia, and the British Empire. British had always a threat from Russia for its rule in India. Therefore, British was trying to keep Russian Empire away from Afghanistan, and it was keen on occupying Afghanistan so that Afghanistan could act as a buffer state before Russia could pose a serious threat to British Empire in India. British had also realized that the British supremacy, the British dominion over the world is because of India. That if you will observe in world history, the day India came out of British, the day India became independent in 1947, British Empire started declining. Britain was no more an economical force up to that extent. So what was that great game? In part of the great game, the British fought three Anglo-Afghan wars. Three wars with Afghanistan. The first Anglo-Afghan war was fought between 1839 to 1842. The then Governor General of Bengal was Auckland, and Auckland's forces were humiliated and defeated by Afghans. Auckland sent his forces. Muhammad Dost Khan, who was the emperor of Afghanistan, he fled away, and 16,500 army troops were stationed in Afghanistan. British thought that we won the battle, and while they were started exiting to Bengal again, when in the Bengal only one person was received out of these 16,500 troops, and that was William Brydon, the assistant surgeon of the troop. This is a painting. This is a painting known as The Remnants of an Army by Elizabeth Thompson. She created this painting during the second Anglo-Afghan war in the 1920s, depicting the severe humiliation the British Empire faced in the hands of the Afghanistan tribes while retreating from the soil of Afghanistan after perceiving victory in the first Anglo-Afghan war. When the commander-in-chief in the Bengal army asked William Brydon, "Where is the army?" William Brydon replied him, "I am the army." Because many of the fellow mates were killed, all others were captured, and only William Brydon survived to return back. Later on, many of them were released, and Britain also safeguarded its soldiers, and some were able to come back again. So with the end of this humiliation, Auckland was summoned from London, and he was asked to return back to London. John Lawrence was appointed as the new Governor General after Auckland's departure, and John Lawrence said that we will bring a change in the policy towards Afghanistan, and he named his policy the policy of masterly inactivity. What is the policy of masterly inactivity? John Lawrence said, we will not directly rule Afghanistan. We would not directly capture and directly dictate our terms or directly command to the people of Afghanistan. Rather, we will run a puppet government in Afghanistan. We will nominate a ruler. The ruler would be from our choice. He would be acting as a puppet, but he would be belonging from the masses. So that it would be easier to pacify the voice of the masses will also feel connected to the ruler, and we can have a direct control through the ruler over the soil of Afghanistan. So the British, after being humiliated in the first Anglo-Afghan war, changed its policy towards the policy of masterly inactivity. Muhammad Dost Khan was given the throne, and Muhammad Dost Khan, without paying a hidden ear to the British, started dictating his own terms. And this again was not digested well by the British Empire, and the British broke out with the second Anglo-Afghan war in the year of 1878, when Lord Lytton was the Viceroy of India. Under Lord Lytton's viceroyship, the British Indian Army started attacking Afghanistan, and this time British gained somewhat of a victory, and they granted Afghanistan became a protectorate. Protectorate means all the military and foreign affairs of Afghanistan would be affected by British. So Afghanistan in the second Anglo-Afghan war became a protectorate of the British, and now after Lord Lytton, there was also another change in policy. As you know that the second Anglo-Afghan war was finished in 1882, whereas Lord Lytton's viceroyship was over in between only. He left India in 1880. So the change in policies ensured that a demarcation of boundary, we will demarcate the boundary between British India and Afghanistan, and hence the Durand Line in 1893 was demarcated, which is the Durand Line is now the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is the Durand Line, the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. This line is the Durand Line. It was made in 1893. Using their diplomatic powers, even Britain made signatories and treaties between Russia and Afghanistan and made the border between Russia and Afghanistan demarcated, so that Russia could be avoided from Afghanistan, and if Russia enters into Afghanistan also, Britain would have time and Afghanistan would remain a buffer state as aspired by the British. But that arrangement also did not last long, and hence the Third Anglo-Afghan War again broke up in 1919, and this time the British Empire were completely defeated and humiliated in 1919. So, if we will analyze why the mighty British Empire, for which the term is used, that the sun was never setting in the British Empire. It was such a vast empire. And why such a vast and powerful, economically as well as resourceful, powerful empire was defeated and humiliated in a tiny soil of Afghanistan? It's because Afghanistan's geographical location as well as Afghanistan's tribes. Tribes formed, they were the ethnic rivalries. These tribes formed ethnic rivalries. The tribes include Pashtuns, Tajiks, Uzbeks, Hazara and Turkmens. Hazara were the Shia tribes, and all these three were the Sunni tribes of Afghanistan. Pashtuns comprise of approximately 72% of Afghanistan, and these tribes, they have their various ethnic and cultural rivalries, and they keep fighting within themselves for supremacy or dominance of one tribe over others. And whenever a foreign empire enters into their soil, they get unified as one entity and they fight that foreign empire till its last breath. They oust the foreign empire and they again gets involved in their infighting for supremacy of power. So it is the geographical location, as you can see in Afghanistan, here the Hindu Kush mountains are present. And this is also a major reason why all the superpowers get defeated in Afghanistan. Because once someone gets hidden in the Hindu Kush mountains, it's next to impossible to find anyone. These orange areas, you can, in the map you can look, these are the Pashtun dominated areas. The tribes of Pashtun, 2/3 of Pashtuns reside in Pakistan. 2/3 of Pashtuns reside in Pakistan. In the northwest, this is the northwest frontier province of Pakistan, and 2/3 of Pashtuns reside in Pakistan. And recently the interesting development was that this is the Durand Line. This border is the Durand Line, and Taliban has made it clear that it will not respect the Durand Line, because it says that Pashtuns, we will take this border up to this region, and Pashtuns will be our territory. The territories of Pashtuns will be the territory of Afghanistan. We don't respect the Durand Line created by British. And this is a new headache for Pakistan, and let's see how Pakistan resolves it. This is the contemporary issue. So getting back to the second timeline, that is the period of semblance stability. Once the British Empire was completely humiliated and defeated in the 1919, the phase of somewhat of stability and was entered into Afghanistan. In 1921, Amanullah Khan, the religious leader of Afghanistan, declared Afghanistan as an emirate. So emirate means emirate is not a democracy, emirate is not a monarchy. Here the religious leader is the supreme commander. But in 1926, the same Amanullah Khan made Afghanistan a monarch. He declared himself as the monarch and he brought monarchy into Afghanistan. And then he left for India, and then he went to Europe, and in Western Europe he died. Following his death in 1929, Muhammad Nadir Shah was throned. He occupied the throne as the king of Afghanistan in 1929. In 1933, Muhammad Nadir Shah was assassinated. He was assassinated in 1933, and his son Muhammad Zahir Shah occupied the throne as the next king. He is the great grandson of one of the brothers of Muhammad Dost Khan. Great grandson of one of the brothers of Muhammad Dost Khan. From 1933 till the end of the Second World War, Afghanistan continued with a sense of stability inside the country, and King Zahir Shah was commanding the dictating the terms in Afghanistan. And in 1953, an interesting development happened when Muhammad Daud Khan, the cousin of King Zahir Shah, he was appointed as the Prime Minister of Afghanistan. In 1933, Muhammad Daud Khan, the cousin of King Zahir Shah, was appointed as the Prime Minister of Afghanistan. The problem with Muhammad Daud Khan was he was a little pro-Soviet person. He was a communist affected person. He believed in no religion existence, because if you will go to the communist, if you will read Karl Marx had said that religion is an opium of masses. He has clearly declined the fact of religion to be existing. Opium of masses, and therefore this will create a problem for Muhammad Daud Khan in the future, which I will be telling you lately. So now with Muhammad Daud Khan, the Cold War period now began between the conflicts between the USA and USSR over establishing the global hegemony of ideology. The Cold War began. So during this Cold War period, as I have mentioned, that Muhammad Daud Khan was the premier of Afghanistan, and he was having a tilt, he was having a pro-communist ideology, and riding through this, he brought the Afghan Communist Party. He formed the Afghan Communist Party secretly in 1965, and the principal leaders of this party were Babrak Karmal and Noor Muhammad Taraki. These two leaders are going to come again in the future. So remember these names. Babrak Karmal and Noor Muhammad Taraki were the principal leaders of the Afghan Communist Party, which was secretly formed in 1965. And after 40 years of being crowned as the king of Afghanistan, Zahir Shah was overthrown from the crown in a bloodless coup by the premier and his cousin brother Muhammad Daud Khan. And the People's Democratic Party, the party which Muhammad Daud Khan belongs to, the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, came to power. With this, Muhammad Daud Khan established Afghanistan from a monarchy to a republic. Afghanistan became a republic for the first time. And you know, India was then the only country in 1973 in the entire South Asian region to recognize this government, that is the government led by Daud Khan. India was the only South Asia region to recognize the government formed by Muhammad Daud Khan, overthrowing the last king of Afghanistan, Muhammad Zahir Shah. In 1975 to 77, various socio-economic reforms, various liberalization policies, rights to women and children, right for minorities were flaunted in Afghanistan under the leadership of Daud Khan. He was somewhat keen to establishing a modern society. He was keen in modernizing the society. He was also interested in introducing all the liberal economic policies, the socio-economic reforms inside the society. But the problem was that various orthodox, religious, tribal groups, ethnic groups, it did not go down well into their throats. The modernizing policy was not digested well by these ethnic groups, and eventually in 1978, Muhammad Daud Khan was killed in a communist coup which was known as Saur Revolution. And Noor Muhammad Taraki, remember, Noor Muhammad Taraki was the man who was the founding principal leaders of the Afghan Communist Party. Following the killing of Muhammad Daud Khan, Noor Muhammad Taraki became the president of Afghanistan, and Babrak Karmal was being the deputy prime minister. But Noor Muhammad Taraki, Noor Muhammad Taraki declared independence from Soviet influence, and he proclaimed that their policies will be based on Islamic principles. That means Noor Muhammad Taraki in a way established the fact that we are going to be an Islamic state and we are not going to be ruled by the Soviet influence. And the Noor Muhammad Taraki and Babrak Karmal, they got a humongous support from these ethnic orthodox tribal groups who were opponent to the modernization policy of Daud Khan, and thereby they established themselves as the strong leaders. But an interesting event happened. In 1979, American ambassador Adolph Dobbs was killed. And following the death of Adolph Dobbs, USA stopped assisting Afghanistan. USA stopped grants given to Afghanistan for its development, and this led to a severe economic crisis. And this economic crisis resulted in the killing of Noor Muhammad Taraki on September 14 by supporters of Hafizullah Amin. The supporters of Hafizullah Amin, he killed Noor Muhammad Taraki. And then, because Amin was a religious follower of religious orthodox principles, now it was clear for the Soviet Rus that it cannot dictate its terms over Afghanistan. And hence it led to invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviet Rus. Why did Soviet Rus invade Afghanistan? There are two crucial doctrines. One is doctrine of Brezhnev. Brezhnev was then the premier or the president of Afghanistan, Soviet Rus, and another one is the doctrine of containment. And this doctrine was followed by USA, doctrine of containment. Doctrine of containment of US said that all the emerging independent nations, the new nations that are gaining independence from the colonial rule in the Asian and Indian subcontinent and the African continent, they must not fall into the hands of communism. They must be contained, they must be controlled from falling into the grasp of communist ideology, and that's what doctrine of containment all about. Another one was doctrine of Brezhnev. Brezhnev's doctrine said that anywhere in any part of the world, if there is a communist government, if there is a communist state, if there is a government backed by the ideology of communism, if that comes to a threat, if the government comes under threat, or if that state spills away from communism or diverts itself from the ideology of communism, then Moscow will interfere. Then Moscow will make sure that communism is restored in that particular area or in that particular nation. So this is doctrine of Brezhnev. Following Brezhnev's doctrine, USSR directly interfered into the government of Afghanistan. USSR invaded Afghanistan, USSR annexed it, USSR sent troops to Afghanistan, more than 1,20,000 troops were sent to Afghanistan, and USSR started controlling Afghanistan directly from 1979 onwards. In 1982, Brezhnev retired from the president, and in 1987, Mohammad Najibullah, he became the president of Afghanistan. In 1987, Muhammad Najibullah acquired the throne of Afghanistan. But after acquiring the throne, becoming the president of Afghanistan in 1987, Najibullah started realizing that it is not a part of Soviet Rus now to maintain Afghanistan. Things were drastically changing in the Soviet Rus. Rus was under economic woes. The Soviet USSR was falling in economy. Mikhail Gorbachev has ascended as the president or secretary of state, you can say, secretary general of Communist Party. Mikhail Gorbachev has clearly told that Afghanistan has become a bleeding wound for Soviet Rus. So it was almost clear on part of Muhammad Najibullah that it is not possible from the Soviet Rus side now to support my seat. And he started oppressing people. He started being established himself as a cruel leader for the masses. Anywhere, anyone who opposed Muhammad Najibullah, he started crushing the revolt very, very ruthlessly. And as I was telling you, in 1989, Soviet Rus withdraw with the signing of the Geneva Peace Accord. It was signed by 4 parties: USA, Pakistan, Afghanistan and USSR, and it said, Geneva Peace Accord, that the more than 120,000 troops that are stationed in Afghanistan of Soviet troops with thousands of tanks and missiles must withdraw from Afghanistan. In the meantime, to fight with the Soviet Rus in 1980s, US with the help of Pakistan has established a group of militias known as the Mujahideens. Mujahideens were the tribal youth acquired by Pakistan ISI and trained by them to raise a guerrilla warfare against Soviet Rus so that it can be defeated and ousted from the soil of Afghanistan. And after Soviet Rus backed out from Afghanistan, Mujahideens aspired to acquire the power. They started to dream of capturing Kabul and establishing their own rule. But what happens after this? In 1991, as we all know, in 1991, the Soviet Rus disintegrated, and with this, in 1991, the fall of the end of Cold War happened. Cold War came to a complete rest. Now we will understand the 90s, the late 20th century, the last decade of 20th century, how it unfolded for Afghanistan after the end of Cold War in 1991 till the time of 9/11 attacks in 2001. A decade, in this one decade, what all the events took place in Afghanistan. In 1992, remember, in 1991, Soviet Rus disintegrated. Muhammad Najibullah was left on his own. He was not getting any kind of support, neither upfront nor backdoor. No arms, ammunitions were being supplied by Soviet Rus after it got disintegrated, and he was in dire straits. And in 1992, sensing this opportunity, Ahmad Shah Massoud, the Tajik leader from the Panjshir province, captures Kabul and ousts Najibullah from power. Ahmad Shah Massoud had formed an alliance known as the Northern Alliance. Recently, the Northern Alliance is in news as Northern Alliance 2.0. It is being heard that the son of Ahmad Shah Massoud, Ahmad Massoud, is trying to gain grounds of Northern Alliance 2.0 to fight the Taliban. In the meantime, in around 90s, Mullah Omar with 50 of his students started Taliban. Remember, Taliban means students. Mullah Omar with 50 of his students. Mullah Omar was a religious cleric. He was an Islamic religious cleric. He with his 50 students had established Taliban, and the Taliban is mainly a Pashtun dominated tribe. The Pashtuns are dominant in Taliban, and hence the Tajik Ahmad Shah Massoud, who was a Tajik leader, had very often was in rivalries with the Taliban. But in 1996, the Taliban rose to power on promises of peace. This Taliban government that captured Kabul in 1996 was only recognized by Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and UAE. These three nations only recognized the government of Taliban. India did not give Taliban a formal recognition, and the relations between India and Taliban again deteriorated with the capture of IC-814 flight, which was hijacked from Nepal's Kathmandu and was stationed in Kandahar. Taliban gained most of its ground because it came with close contacts with Al-Qaeda's Osama bin Laden. Laden used to support Taliban economically and ideologically. Osama Laden, if you know, Osama Laden was brought from the Middle East to the regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan border in order to raise and ideologically brainwash the Mujahidins. This gentleman, Osama bin Laden, yes, he was a gentleman, he was a son of a billionaire, and Osama bin Laden, this gentleman, he trained thousands of Mujahidins, and eventually he raised jihad against US only and started training fighters and established a terrorist organization known as Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda previously had attacked US embassies in Iran, UAE, and hence Osama bin Laden before 2001 also was a designated terrorist by America. US had always put pressure on Taliban that please hand Osama bin Laden to us. And then the 9th September 2001, Ahmad Shah Massoud, he was in exile, he was in Europe. He gave a speech in British Parliament as well. And there he said that Osama bin Laden might be planning a severe attack on the soil of US. And no one in the world has taken that statement seriously. And after that, on 9th September, Ahmad Shah Massoud was going to give an interview to BBC News Channel. The interviewer and the camera person, the two persons who came to take his interview on disguise of BBC News reporters, were none but the Talibans. And they assassinated Ahmad Shah Massoud. And on 2 days after that, after assassination of Massoud, on 11th September 2001, the attacks carried out on US, 4 planes were hijacked, 2 got crashed into the Twin Towers, 1 was into the Pentagon, and another one was shut down on its way to the White House. After the Pearl Harbor attack in 1945 by Japan that led the US to drop nuclear bombs on Japan, it was the biggest ever attack carried out on the US soil. And if we will also look, Pearl Harbor was a distant island from the mainland of US, but 9/11 attack was carried directly on the mainland, on the soil, on the business and World Trade Center of US. This led to the statement of George W. Bush. In the press conference, George Bush said, either you are with America or you are with terrorism. This itself is a big statement, because it can also be seen that everyone who is not with US can be said that they are with terrorists. So after 9/11 attacks, US asked again Taliban to hand over uh, Osama bin Laden to US. They carried out some missile attacks in Afghanistan as well. And Mullah Omar said that anyone who comes under the refugee of Taliban, it's the guidance of Islam that we protect our refugees. We cannot hand over our refugees to their enemies. And there USA landed its military on the soil of Afghanistan. The NATO forces came in, and on December 2001 the Taliban left Kabul. These events unfolded after the 9/11 attacks carried out on US. In December 2001, the Taliban leadership fled from Kabul owing to severe attacks from the NATO forces. In 2004, the general elections were held in Afghanistan. Hamid Karzai became the democratically elected president. After this, again in 2009, Hamid Karzai was re-elected as the president of Afghanistan. In 2008, an interesting development happened. Mullah Ghani Baradar, who is now going to be the president of Afghanistan, he was arrested in Pakistan. It was heard that it was from various sources translate that Mullah Ghani Baradar, he was in talks with Hamid Karzai. Hamid Karzai was the then president of Afghanistan. He was in talks with Hamid Karzai so that peace can be restored in Afghanistan. How peacefully can power be shared, and how peacefully without bloodshed can Taliban and the democracy can survive, coexist in Afghanistan. Sensing, because Pakistan was always trying to establish Afghanistan as an Islamic state and a puppet government in Afghanistan so that it can dictate its terms over Afghanistan, sensing trouble over here, Pakistan arrested Mullah Baradar and put him in jail. And in 2nd May 2011, the world knows that Osama bin Laden was killed by the Marine Commandos of US at Abbottabad, Pakistan. Following this, in 2013, Afghan army took over all military and security operations from NATO forces. Because after capturing Kabul in 2001, NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization was pretty sure that we are not going to stay here forever. It is the people of Afghanistan who needs to be trained, who needs to be equipped so that they can protect their own rights of their own. We are not going to stay here for eternity. We are not going to protect them for eternity. They need to stand themselves for their own rights, and they must be equally equipped and trained for that. Hence, in 2013, Afghan army, which was raised by the NATO, trained and developed by them, equipped by the world forces, they took over all the military and security operations from the NATO forces. In May 2014, President Obama announced the timetable for significantly reducing the US troop sizes in Afghanistan by 2016. In 2013, remember, NATO forces withdrew, but the US forces were still present. US forces were still present in Afghanistan, and they are still present till date in Afghanistan. Therefore, in 2014, in relation to this, President Obama announced that we will significantly reduce the forces of US in Afghanistan. Then in September 2018, President Donald Trump had appointed Mike Pompeo as the Secretary of State. Mike Pompeo named Zalmay Khalilzad, an Afghan origin US citizen, as the special representative for Afghanistan reconciliation. And in this backdrop, the Mullah Baradar was released. In September 2018, Mullah Ghani Baradar was released from the jail of Pakistan, and they started having talks with the US directly. Then in February 2020, US, before the COVID lockdowns began, US and Taliban, they signed agreement on a peace deal that would serve as the preliminary terms for the US withdrawal from country by May 2021. Then in November 2020, months before Joe Biden took over as the president of the US announced the plan to cut troop size in half down to 2,500. Then after Joe Biden became the president, he announced in April 2021 that US troop will completely withdraw by 9/11/2021. In August 10, 2021, when severe attacks by Taliban forces were mounted on the government forces on the Afghanistan army, White House said that Taliban takeover is not inevitable following the US PD withdrawal from the country. President Joe Biden was asked, "Do you see Taliban in how much time can Taliban capture Kabul?" Then President Joe Biden replied that I don't think that Taliban is in a position to capture Kabul at present. But on 15th of August 2021, when India was celebrating its independence, the Afghanistan government collapsed and Kabul fell under the grasp of the Talibans. So what are the investments, how would it impact the relationship of India with Afghanistan? We can have a separate video over the developments of Afghanistan and its impact over India. We will discuss in detail. India has invested majorly in Afghanistan. India has constructed Salma Dam. India has constructed a world-class library, the Parliament House. The Salma Dam is also having a hydroelectric project with a capacity of 55 megawatt of electricity. So these are various investments made by government of India in Afghanistan in establishing the friendly relations or the people to people relations with the Afghanistan. So we will have a discussion in another video. And while saying this, I remember one of the statements given by the erstwhile US President Donald Trump once when he was asked in 2020 that when Qatar on the table of Qatar negotiation every party was involved, only India was excluded. To this, when Donald Trump was asked, don't you feel that India will get a huge setback or get huge losses? Then Donald Trump said that India has only created a library in Afghanistan, and who nowadays is reading books? Maybe he was not reading books, and this all we will look at a separate video, the impact of Afghanistan development on India. Impact on India. But what are the lessons? We have seen three superpowers being humiliated. We have seen no one is learning any lesson. After the British Empire was humiliated badly, the Soviet Rus entered Afghanistan. It was also humiliated, and now the US, it was also humiliated, and the only focus at present of the US is for a safe and honorary exit. This implies the German philosopher George Hegel's statement that the only thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. Had we have learned from the ousting of two superpowers previously, then US must not have invaded into Afghanistan. This establishes once again Hegel's statement that the only thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. Thank you.